Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 11 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. Well, as more insanity unfolds across the northern part of Europe, or central part of Europe, in the Ukraine and Crimea, and we have John Kerry and William Hague banging the drums of war. Make no bones about it, the global corporatists have been desperate to initiate World War III for the best part of the last few years. They thought they were going to be able to do it with Syria, and the British public effectively managed to shut that down by telling their MPs that there was no way that they supported this war. The margin was very narrow. The vote against initiating an attack on Syria was won by just 13 votes. In other words, if 7 MPs had voted differently, we would have been in the early stages of World War III by now. However, it didn't work the way the global corporatists intended. So now they're trying once again. And whoever would have believed that 30 years ago you'd have turned to a Russian news station for the truth? The one thing that we know about the BBC is that they are now a pure propaganda machine. And I was speaking to a Russian emigre who's lived in this country for some 30 years, and she told me, she said the thing about Soviet Russia was that everybody knew that the Russian TV stations and the newspapers, Pravda, which ironically means truth, was anything but. Today, unfortunately, what she sees in the UK is a mirror of what was occurring in the Soviet Empire some 30-odd years ago. The difference being is that the vast majority of British people still believe that the BBC is pumping out the truth. So watch this space. Don't hesitate to call your MP and let them know that any attempt to get the UK involved in what is occurring in Ukraine and the Crimea will not be supported by the electorate. And with an election now just 12 months away, many of these MPs will want to try and protect their position. So let them know. Bear in mind that this pathetic form of democracy that we have in the UK can only operate with public apathy. The moment that the population actually take an interest, it changes the whole dynamic. It's time for the people to actually remind the government that they are indeed public servants and that we are not their slaves and they are not elected to function at the behest of the corporations. Now, tonight's guest, I am very pleased to welcome, because this is an individual that I have tremendous amount of respect for. And if you were watching UK Column Live before this show came on air, you would have been watching Greg Nikolettos' presentation from AV3, which was almost 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Actually, it was November of 2009 in Bristol. And Greg had been, in my opinion, the world's leading researcher into the human microchipping agenda. Greg told us when he arrived in the UK that that was the first time that he'd given a public presentation to an audience of that size. And whilst he may have been a little nervous at the start of his presentation, by the end of it, he was in full flow. And he got a well-deserved standing ovation from the audience at the end of that presentation. And he went on to celebrate that evening. And I believe there's a little story about leaving his computer in a nightclub, and maybe we'll touch on that with Greg when we hook up with him. So I am very pleased to announce that Greg Nikolettos is going to be our headline speaker, basically, at AV5, which is in just 10 days' time. And Greg will be giving 2 presentations on the Saturday evening. We'll take a break between them because Greg has a lot of ground that he wants to cover. And this is going to be a massively updated presentation from what he delivered in 2009. The human microchipping agenda, transhumanism, is fast approaching. You know, we see technology taking away the fundamentals of humanity and replacing it with effectively artificial intelligence. And we should be looking at the wider aspects of that manipulative agenda through the 2 days of AV5 in Daventry on the weekend of 16th through 19th of May. So today, for those of you who haven't seen it, here we have on screen the Humanity versus Insanity, the poster there. And if you want to see more details of the outstanding speakers list, I can assure you that there will not be a dull moment. And the conference has been structured to provide as much time as possible for people to network, because this is going to be a conference that is going to make a difference. This isn't going to be a conference where people just come along, listen to a few speakers, and then walk away thinking that was a nice weekend. They will walk away with the tools to be able to start making a difference, including the launch of a new political initiative, which is intended to be a very serious thorn in the side of the establishment. So, without further ado, let me welcome Greg Nikolettos. Now, Greg is talking to us from southern Queensland, where the time is stupid o'clock on Tuesday morning. But Greg has kindly got out of his pit and has agreed to join us. So he may well still be in his pyjamas. Are you there, Greg?
I'm here. Can you see me in?
I can. Actually, you're not in your pyjamas. It looks like you've just come back in from a mission.
I have.
And what mission was that?
Cyber-terrorism.
Say again? Cyber-terrorism. Cyber-terrorism. Yeah, Greg, it's great to see you. I mean, we actually managed to hook up when I was speaking in Brisbane, which would have been, what, about, well, 2.5 years ago, I think. And, of course, you took us out for a dinner that night. And then you actually took some time out. You decided that you needed a break from activism. So tell us what occurred there.
I don't want to be a spoiler alert, but at the end of the day, I'll bring it up at the AV5. I folded the website simply because my life was under threat. There was basically an attempt on my life by the intelligence agencies. I have documented proof. I had whistleblowers that actually contacted me. I set up a dead man switch, and look, the event was that traumatic. You know, I had a massive user base, and for me to make a decision like that, I had to go through, you know, users emailing me saying you've dropped the ball. You know, what the hell are you doing? Are you COINTELPRO? And you know, I believe there's a season to go become active, and there's a season to sometimes go quiet. Yep. And now the time is the time to rage against the machine.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, you know, for people actually on the front line, there are times when the pressure can be quite significant, and you know, at the end of the day, obviously we do what we do because we are committed, and there's no question those people that have just watched your AV3 presentation will have seen the strength and the passion of your commitment. And having taken a break, I know from speaking with you that you've come back a lot stronger, a lot more resilient, and basically a lot more prepared to be able to deal with whatever's thrown at you.
Well, look, the shit I've been through in the last 2 years, I mean, there was 2 major attempts. One, to kill me. 2, to basically set me up with a speed precursor lab. I've defended all those, and what I've come to the conclusion is these people, these powers, these entities, these archdemons have no power over us. The only power they have over us is the power we give them. So at the end of the day, Greg Nikolettos is going to die when he's going to die. No day sooner, no day later.
Exactly. You're absolutely right, of course, and I mean, this is something that is almost impossible to explain to people that haven't experienced it. I mean, it's almost as though this is part of some cosmic initiation that you have to go through to be able to come out the other side, and it's only having gone through the fear and the anger, that which are absolutely critical stages in the process. But having gone through them, then I mean, I wouldn't quite say that you're bulletproof, but you're pretty damn close.
Well, at the end of the day, to get through me, you've got to go through God. So, you know, I'm back in the right horse.
Well, you know, it's absolutely wonderful to have you back on the team. I mean, you are, without any shadow of doubt, a tremendous asset. And of course, it's no real surprise that those who think they are the rightful rulers, wrongly, of this planetary fiefdom, it's no real surprise that you know, they decided that you were getting a little bit too close to the mark, because the work that you were doing, particularly on the microchipping agenda, was absolutely leading edge. Now, obviously, I know you've got some incredible material to share with us, and that's why you're having 2 sessions to speak on the Saturday evening. You know, there'll be a break between your 2 sessions so that people have the opportunity to digest the magnitude of the information that you're sharing. But of course, also you'll be sharing certain tools, your experiential tools, as to how people can challenge this. So give us a little bit of a taster, Greg, just on some of the aspects that you're going to cover at AV5.
Okay, my point is to basically unify all conspiracy theories under Tesla's ether theory, which wasn't a theory. He actually validated and unified all science. So what the presentation will basically do is showcase how, for example, COINTELPRO is actually utilized by conspiracy theorists to actually distract us from, which I consider to be the main agenda. The main agenda is to basically get you microchipped, without a shadow of a doubt. Yes, chemtrails exist. Yes, GMO foods exist. 9/11 happened. We're still banging on about that 11 years later. Like, the major attraction, Ian, is distraction, right? So what we're going to reveal as well is who is who within the truth movement. Who's COINTELPRO? Who can you trust? And I can tell you, man, we're going to shatter the atom. The data that I have will not only take the last presentation, it's going to... You got no idea.
Yeah, I think you're going to... I mean, obviously, this is going to be a gathering of some extremely epistemologically integral people. You know, people who have an open mind, people who are able to embrace that which the vast majority of people have been conditioned to reject. But I have a sense that you're going to even challenge them.
Look, I've reached breaking point at the end of the day, right? And what people need is the truth. And what's happening is you have funnels of the truth coming from multiple sites. I mean, you've got thousands of conspiracy sites right now, right? The question is, who do you trust and why do we trust them? So we'll discuss WikiLeaks, we'll discuss Julian Assange, we'll discuss Snowden, we'll discuss Anonymous, you know, yourself. But the major point behind this is we're basically going to be discussing who is the Antichrist, who are the aliens, and who are the aliens working with, and what is the agenda. And further than that, we'll cover strong artificial intelligence, the global information grid, the competition right now between who actually will dominate the mark of the beast sector or the microchip. It's a competition between Google and IBM. So at the end of the day, I thought there was only going to be one player, and I'm wrong. There's 3 players now. You basically have Philips, you have Google, and you have IBM. Now, if I had to hazard a guess, I can't tell you who's going to win the game. It's between IBM and Google. Philips, although they have got a product in the market, you know, it's going... Look, this is the point. The way Satan works is he hedges his bets, right? So he gives one particular agenda to one archdemon and another one to another archdemon. And then they basically compete for who's going to basically win. So who wins in the end is irrelevant. The agenda is going to come into play. It's 100%. The prophecies, we'll discuss that. We go through all the prophecies amongst all the ancient texts, the Sumerian texts, the Taoist texts, the Hindu texts, the Zen texts, the Satanic Bible. We cover the Holy Bible. We basically cover what books do the Illuminati recommend for you to read. And then once you find out what they want you to read, you basically then utilize a mathematical equation of going, okay, well, if certain texts aren't in the Illuminati bookstore, for example, with the Lucis Trust, it gives a lot away. So a lot of the stuff that I will basically use is not going to only use the science of semantics, it'll actually use the science of maths. So if we can mathematically prove probabilities and prophecies, you know, to a score of 1 to 157 zeros, I mean, hell, you know, calculate that number. It's septillions times septillions, almost to infinity.
So if you've got a list of books that they do want you to read, and then of course we are able to establish that there are other books that they'd rather we didn't read, would you recommend that actually both sets of books should be read? Because, you know, the art of war is certainly about knowing everything that you could possibly know about your opponent.
Absolutely. Look, but what you need to do, right, is you need to use spiritual discernment. At the end of the day, I do read Manly P. Hall's Secret Teaching of All Ages, okay? It is a fantastic account of all. It basically covers music, colour, space. But what you need to also understand is Manly P. Hall is a 33rd degree level Freemason. He was almost as high as Aleister Crowley. And
I believe he achieved that at about 19 as well.
Absolutely, right? So you need to understand these people are channeling information through actual demonic entities, right? I don't channel, I just pray, and I just, you know, I won't, you know, go into details, but I'll do that later. But at the end of the day, I am getting spiritual insight, but I'm not using witchcraft to do it. There's a big difference, you know. I'm not drawing pentagrams on the ground and having blood sacrifices and going to war. I'm simply doing good research, and certain ideas and concepts will just drop into my head, because the one thing I pray for, look, I'm already a rich man. I've got a lovely family and a wife who's, that poor woman, I don't know how she's put up with me for so long, but that's not the point. I mean, I pray for wisdom. That's my, I mean, I tested my IQ. I was just as a thing to do, and I'm at 161, which was quite upsetting because Hawkins is at 160, and I thought I'd be much higher than that.
Now, come on, you're being bashful now.
I'm just calling it how it is.
No, hey, listen. No, I mean, no one is going to dispute, Greg. You are a very, very smart kiddie, and you know the reality is that what the insights that you're sharing here are very, very important, because you know, obviously the reality is that you know, we are at a particular juncture in our evolutionary process where we do have the capability and the capacity to access other levels of consciousness. I mean, where those levels of consciousness reside is perhaps one of the great unknowables. And of course, this is the thing that baffled Jung for many years, because he absolutely acknowledged that a lot of his insights were coming from another level of consciousness. It wasn't his waking consciousness, but he wasn't able to discern at any juncture whether or not that consciousness was actually part of him, and he was simply tapping into something that resided deep in his psyche, or whether it was external, and he was established some kind of link to it. And of course, during the course of his life, he actually gave it a name. He called it Philemon. And in fact, in the latter days of his life, he actually drew what he felt was a pictorial depiction of Philemon. But he spent much of his career trying to conceal this relationship that he had with this other consciousness, for fear, of course, that he would be ridiculed. And, you know, there are others like this. I mean, Rudolf Steiner never acknowledged, and I know you have some thoughts on Steiner, and I certainly am fascinated by the reasons that led to his separation from Blavatsky and Theosophy. But Steiner gave over 6,000 lectures, rarely repeated himself. If he did, it was to sort of endorse something that he'd said previously, but he never actually divulged where that information was coming from. And you know, what we do know is that much of the wisdom that he shared has, and this is 100 years ago, has proven to be absolutely spot on, and some of the knowledge, particularly in terms of education and farming, has proven to be absolutely invaluable and is right at the forefront, in fact, against the thrust of the global corporatists to establish factory education and factory farming.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll tell you what my ride has been, right? So people can't, you know, say, okay, well, you know, Greg's got this belief system. I was raised as a Christian. At the age of 17, Christianity didn't resonate with me at all. I just didn't understand certain concepts, like, you know, why would Jesus send down his son to die for him? I thought, you know, what a brutal and evil God he is. I then basically followed the Taoist text. I was a Taoist for about 2 years. I then went into Zen because I love Star Wars, and obviously that's another point. Star Wars, you have what is conceived to be a dark side and a good side. You don't. You actually have Zen basically fighting demons. So similar to the Matrix, it's a switch and bait. So Neo from the Matrix does not actually capture the Matrix or break the Matrix. He is actual program within the Matrix. So these people who are actually bringing out these programs are highly intelligent in. I mean, they are geniuses in their field, but at the end of the day, they're backing the wrong horse. I can tell you that much. So going back to me, I went into Theosophy extremely hard for about 5 years. And then I dabbled heavily into witchcraft with pharmakia. So I actually had a familiar spirit called Marty, which, you know, would do my bidding, if you like. So it wasn't anything that I exploited or anything like that, but, you know, one day the tables got turned on me by this particular entity, and I gained a lot of wisdom from that. I realised I was meddling with things that I thought I could control, but ultimately, you know, you play with fire, you're going to get burnt.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to you or me or us, you know, without actually the reliance on the other realms. They are there. And, you know, in many cases, of course, we have to acknowledge the experience. And this is, of course, the fundamental difference that is emerging today. In fact, you know, obviously the establishment is fighting to keep people locked into physical, empirical, material reality, which, of course, is extremely limited in terms of the five senses. Whereas humanity is going through a natural evolutionary process that expands, if you like, the bandwidth of the five senses and actually brings into play other senses. And of course there is a lot of mythology from all around the world which talks about this period in humanity's evolutionary process as being very, very significant. And, you know, anybody who tells you they know exactly how this is going to pan out, I guess is probably delusional. Meanwhile, of course, we have... delusional? Well, we have a tremendous learning opportunity here, don't we? I mean, we really have an opportunity, and you know, it's like all games. At the end of the day, you only really improve your own capability and capacity in any game or sport if you're playing against people that are better than you.
Correct.
And, you know, there's no question we're very much in a learning mode right now. Now, Greg, you've sent through a few graphics. And let me bring up this first one here, because, I mean, I think this is really very illustrative of what we're talking about here. You know, the ultimate weapon is not a loaded gun, but an educated mind. And of course, the educated mind is absolutely crucial. And what we're seeing, of course, is the establishment absolutely desperately trying to get control of the human mind. And of course, these are the issues that actually, if you look at the speakers at AV5, you know, we're going to be looking at the conditioning of humanity through the media, through films, through TV, through the media. We're going to be looking at mind control. We have an outstanding presentation by a young psychologist, Neil Sanders, who has a very, very unusual presentation and going to be showing some of the techniques that are used by the likes of politicians and those who purport to be thought leaders, and the techniques that they use in trying to manipulate the world view of the masses. But you know, the reality is, as you and I both know, the number of people who are actually stepping outside of that very narrow realm is increasing exponentially, and they are absolutely scared shitless.
Absolutely. And the way I look at it, right, that they spend 99% of their resources to blanket the truth, and it just takes 1% to disperse it. So I view it as a bottle of, or a glass of water, and one drop of oil basically contaminates the water, and that's what the truth movement is about. And you know, people are going to be shocked at the end of the day with what it's going to be my revelations, it's going to be my opinions, but you know, I'm not going to go risk my reputation in front of a live audience unless I have done due diligence. I can promise you that much.
Well, just to let you know that if you have any intention of determining that I am in fact the Antichrist, you're not the first. No. In fact,
I calculated your numbers. You came out to 676. 676.
I'm close. Is that right?
Not close enough.
Not close enough. No, but a few years ago, a certain individual appeared on Edge Media. And in the course of an interview, in fact, if I'd have known you were going to broach that subject, I might have had the clip ready to show. But he absolutely shocked the host, who, by the way, will also be at the conference. But he shocked the host when he was pushed to name the Antichrist, and he said, "Well, actually, it's somebody that I think we all know. It's a guy called Ian Crane." And the look on the host. No. You'll find it on YouTube. If you actually search for Ian Crane, the Antichrist, you know, you will find that this particular individual is way ahead of you. And the reason that he did that was because I apparently refused. Well, not apparently, I did refused to acknowledge this particular individual as my Messiah.
Oh wow! Well, there's many of them around. What did Jesus say? Many will come in my name. There will be many antichrists. So look, and we've got to use the word antichrist in a way. An antichrist, all he is a person that's got a reprobate mind. It's a person that is focused on capitalism, money, lust, power, greed, synthetic fame, you name it. It's you know, it's the world we live in is a big distraction, you know, from where we were, you know, 100 years ago even. If I go speak to old people as much as I can, because I get a lot more wisdom, you know, from a guy that's been around the tracks for 80 years rather than a kid that's 20 years old that wants to be on Facebook and have 5,000 friends and show his muscles. Like, even though I make a lot of money from my industry, and it drives me insane. It's the ego that's within it is unbelievable. But if I can monetize the ego and do good work with it, I'm self-funded. I've spent a lot of money on the movement. I'll put my money where my mouth is.
No, full credit to you, and absolutely. And I must confess, Greg, I should be taking a few tips from you when you're over in the UK. Because you know, one of the challenges here is that doing what we do seems to suck the financial resources faster than they come in. But one way or another, they do come in eventually. And again, it's just finding that balance between trying to do what we do without being on the treadmill. Because nobody understands better than me how difficult it is to step off that treadmill. 15 years ago, I had no concept of life without a salary, and yet for the last 14 years, I haven't had a salary, and I'm still here and, you know, still surviving. So there is a way, but sometimes there's no easy script.
Wouldn't you agree, right? Like, as in, you know, I'm you know, I'm not a billionaire, but I'm wealthy, right? But I can tell you, even though, you know, we produce some of the best sports supplements in the world, and, you know, I have a brand which is like the Louis Vuitton of the bodybuilding world, that gives me 20%, what's the word, satisfaction. With the people, I can't even measure it in. I can't even measure it. It's my body of work. It's when I leave this earth, that's going to be my resume, and that's all I care about. I want to make a difference.
Well, and I think that's where we're at right now, isn't it? You know, what is the legacy that we are leaving for future generations? And of course, you are speaking to us right now from southern New South Wales, and in Australia, sorry, not New South Wales, Queensland, southern Queensland, and you are basically right in the heart of frackland in Australia, yeah. And you know, you will be more familiar than many Australians about the horrendous ecological damage that is being done to your country. And as you know, when I was in Australia a couple of years ago, I was trying to explain to those who were prepared to listen that Australia is being set up for a massive financial collapse. This is still the case. It should be one of the wealthiest nations, if not the wealthiest nation on the planet, based on resources versus population. Yet the level of personal debts in Australia is the highest level in the Western world, because it ain't the people that are benefiting from the wealth.
Yeah, I'll tell you how bad it's gotten in Australia, right? I was born in South Africa, and I'm from Greek lineage, basically. I came out to Australia, and I've never seen a country raped so quickly, with such determination. At the end of the day, I went and saw a guy called Mr. Mortgage speak at a Nexus conference where I was also presenting, and what it came down to was he basically showcased that Australia is not only in the biggest housing bubble in the world, but Brisbane, the city I live in, is the most expensive city in the world by a long shot. I'll give you an example. A can of Coke from 7-Eleven is up to $4.50. So to convert that into pounds, it's what?
About £2.
About £2.50, yeah.
That's horrendous.
You can't, you buy one Subway meal with double cheese and double bacon, which I always do, even though I'm not meant to eat pork. That's not the point. I love it. It's $20 in. $20. Oh. £10 for a Subway.
Yeah, Greg, and of course it's far worse in the land of Gina Rinehart in Western Australia, where, you know, obviously the mining industry is putting so much money into the economy that people are borrowing outrageous amounts of money to buy property and buy all the toys. But you know, you go out for breakfast, and when I was in Perth, what was that, about 18 months ago, and I was paying $35 for a breakfast. You know, which I mean, the exchange rate sterling is a bit stronger now, but back then, you know, that was like about £18 for a fry up.
And you know, this is the point. It's Australians extremely delusional. I came from South Africa, which is a country where you go buy your chicken from your chicken shop, you get back to your car, and you're grateful to God that you made it to your car alive. Okay, I come out to Australia, and the mantra of Australia is "she'll be right, mate." It's "she'll be right, mate." So it doesn't matter what the government's doing. It doesn't matter what resources they're stealing with you. It doesn't matter that Gina Rinehart basically wants to bring Malaysians and Thai to work for $4 an hour and to destroy the wage system, which is, look, I'm a pro-capitalist. I believe in capitalism because obviously it does reward you. You got two camps. You got capitalism or you got communism. Capitalism, though, is absolutely out of control. Like you said, and I'll quote you, capitalism is working so well, it's ridiculous. You know, it is ridiculous.
It's got beyond capitalism, of course. It's actually corporatism. You know, because I agree with you. I mean, I am a benign capitalist. I believe, you know, capitalism can be used to create wealth, true wealth, and it of course motivates those that have the capacity and capability to excel, whilst at the same time providing for those who don't have the same level of capability and capacity. But it's out of control, and in fact on the, I think it was episode 8 of the Crane Report, I did a special program where I looked at the distribution of wealth globally, in the US and in the UK. And of course, what we've seen over the last few years is, in all cases, the wealth has been migrating into the pockets of a smaller and smaller number of people, whilst the vast majority of people are being pushed into, well, in the UK it's called austerity, but in reality it's poverty. It's abject poverty. And the politicians, and it's really no surprise because it's the same in New Zealand, it's the same in Australia, in Canada, in the US, in the entire English-speaking world, and of course many, many other countries. And ultimately, obviously what they are trying to do is to literally subjugate humanity back into abject slavery. And, you know, obviously what we're doing, you know, we're basically letting them know that they ain't going to have it all their own way. Ain't that right?
They're not. And the point is this, it's, you know, with my journey, what I've realised is I'm actually working with a mathematician to come up with a measure for wisdom, right, which has always puzzled me. Not puzzled me. There's 4 theories that are now trying to determine, or science is trying to figure out how wisdom is calculated, and all the theories are severely flawed. They're still based on E equals MC squared. Now, I will tell you who's come on board with us, which is an absolute, it showcases you can change people, is Stephen Hawking is now against strong artificial intelligence.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So, you know, for him to have a backflip, I'll tell you why he had the backflip. It's CERN is basically is not releasing the actual data. They're manipulating the data just like NASA's doing, right? So, at the end of the day, CERN has actually proven God, but because they can't unify God into the system without saying there is a God, they need to fudge the data. So, look, God's very tricky at the end of the day. Eventually science will get to a point where it has to prove God, because God can be proven. I mean, let's debunk evolution in 5 steps, okay? No missing link, no vertical evolution, no fossil records in relation to a mutating animal, no adapt or migrate or die theory can possibly hold true, because if a species is under threat, it should basically evolve. So why aren't the gorillas growing wings and growing out of their habitat? I don't know. Why isn't a gorilla now a human, and why does a gorilla continue to remain a gorilla? Because Darwin is full of bullshit.
Well, it was just a question of providing an antithesis to the 6 days or 7 days of creation. So basically, you know, what it was doing was providing 2 acceptable orthodoxies. So it was acceptable to believe in the 7 days of creation, a la Genesis, and it was acceptable, so post 1840s or whatever, acceptable to believe in evolution. But woe betide you if you believed in anything else, and still the case today, of course, because then you are just dismissed as an absolute loon. But of course, if we look at the mythology, the folklore all around the world, we see something very, very different. But Greg, you know, one of the things that, as you know, I've been trying to focus on over the last few years is this realization, this acknowledgement that there are people from all around the world who are coming together, and this is where obviously the technology can serve us rather than control us. So, you know, what we have, like all tools, they can be used appropriately or they can be used inappropriately. It's just like in ancient Greek, you know, the word pharma effectively meant cure and poison, just depending on, you know, how it was used. And so we have access to exactly the same tools as those who want to use those tools to subjugate humanity into slavery. And we can use those same tools to help extricate humanity from not only slavery, but actually return humanity, genuine humanity, to its true dominion. And I don't know, I doubt very much whether I'm going to see it in, you know, what's left of my 28,000 days on this mortal coil. I've enjoyed the crap out of it so far, and, you know, actually it gets more and more exciting, you know, by the day. But, you know, I think it was the Chinese who said, may you live in interesting times, but of course it was meant as a curse. Well, we live in what is quite possibly, you know, some of the most interesting times in recorded history. But, you know, unfortunately, like all interesting times, it really is the question of how bad does it have to get before people actually do wake out of their slumber and start to realise the full extent of the power that they hold, if only they dare to use it.
Yeah, and look, you know, people go, you know, the world is collapsing. We know that, right? But at the end of the day, with the collapse and with people losing their money and losing their jobs, right? They start questioning life, and they start, you know, the guy who can't find a job for 2 weeks, all of a sudden he's got more time on his hands and might start doing a bit of research at the end of the day. So, look, I believe even though, you know, things are going to collapse, there's not a doubt. I mean, there's 500 prophecies to come, 2,000 have been fulfilled. You know, the data is there. I mean, what you see, in the beginning when I first started the We the People site 2002, I truly believed I could stop it. I truly believed I could stop it, right? And then I realised that this agenda is paramount for man to basically reach the next step, if you like. Whether, you know, other people call it a higher level of consciousness, I dismiss that. The Aquarian age is absolute bullshit to me. It's basically based on New Age doctrine, which is promoted by the Lucis Trust. The Earth did actually have a polar shift. I've got evidence of that. So everyone's talking about the polar shift that was coming. It happened. Nothing happened. Nothing happened in.
Well, it's going to, Greg, we're running out of time, as is always the case. I am so looking forward to hooking up with you. Just before we go, though, I want to give people a bit of a taster of some of the aspects that you're going to be covering in your talk. Obviously, we've already let's bring up the slide here. We've already touched on this. The mark of the beast, the very chip, the Google chip, IBM chip, Microsoft, whatever it might be. You're going to give us a bit more background in that. This is one I think is going to provide some stimulating debate. In fact, I can well see that there will be discussion late into the night in the bar after your presentation, provided you don't run off and leave your computer in a nightclub, which I seem to remember you did before.
I won't do it again, Ian. My wife got real angry.
Yeah, well, I remember we had to get a taxi for you to get to the club about 3 o'clock in the morning. But that was down to your jet lag. I mean, I have to let people know that you literally flew in from Brisbane, gave your presentation, and pretty much flew out again.
Yeah.
So, you know,
no, well, I've got a week there, so I'm going to just crawl from pub to pub and just relax. And look, I've got 117 slides. Each slide is look, people need to buy this presentation. It's as simple as that, okay? It's a small amount of money. Ian will let you copy it and distribute it. I'm sure he's got no problem with that. But, you know, without sounding egotistical, right, I've split the atom. I've united all theories in. It's when you Google certain stuff and nothing comes up, you just go, wow, I'm in no man's land right now. No man's land. Yep, you're leading edge without any shadow of doubt. One final picture that I'm looking forward to hearing you discuss is this one here. That's apparently that's me on the left after a bad day. And finally, of course, where would we be without the real Antichrist here? Oh no, I didn't say that.
Anyway, Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend, to speak to you tonight. Thank you so much for getting out of your bed at stupid o'clock in Brisbane. And if you're still up in about 45 minutes time, then we'll be having Fracking Nightmare going out live, where I'll be speaking to Dan Schreiber, who will be speaking to us from the Bentley blockade just across the border in New South Wales, and also to Vera Scroggins, who's the scourge of the gas industry in Pennsylvania. So true international flavour tonight. So Greg, hey, stay safe, my friend. I'm looking forward to hooking up with you in about 10 days' time at AV5.
Thanks for having me in. God bless, mate.
All the best, my friend. Take care.
See you, mate.
Okay, that's it. That was episode 11 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. AV5 is pulling together some of the leading thought people in what is the term I'm looking for? I have a senior moment here. Thought leaders, was that? Thought leaders, yes, thought leaders, the term used by Common Purpose and Chatham House. Well, these are thought leaders from the other side of the table. If you can't join us at AV5, then hopefully, as Greg says, we will have the DVDs available shortly afterwards. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully see you in about 45 minutes on Fracking Nightmare.